some banks on St. Martin have been closing accounts for both private and business people, even though they are legally compliant. If you are aware, what are you doing about this? And my second question, I got word that Mr. Etienne Ace from Curacao should be coming to St. Martin to assess our tax department. Is this so? And if this is so, what contribution can Mr. Ice give to St. Martin, knowing that Curacao economy is collapsing and he has not yet saved it?
Thank you very much for those questions, Bibi. First of all, as regards to your first question, or let me start with the last question first. Yes, I have consulted with Mr. Ace. Mr. Ace was president or is president from the Financial Association of Curacao. He is a tax expert himself. He has vast experience in advising on tax matters. I have been in touch with him, and I have invited him to come to St. Martin to have a discussion. As you know, Curacao has reformed its entire tax system, and so has Aruba. St. Martin is running behind and is losing its competitive edge. Tax reform is a major step, and you cannot just jump into tax reform because it's like a spacecraft. You press one button, something goes that way. You press another button, it goes a different direction. And so it is with taxes, depend on what you tweak, what decisions you make. You might improve one area, but it might create a hole in another area. So it's basically general discussions that we're having. On the 17th of May, I hope to travel to Curacao. At that time, there is going to be a meeting, a sort of a conference between the ministers of finance of Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin. All has to do with improvement of tax departments, collections, software, hardware. So it's something that's in motion. And from that point of view, all advice and all information that you can gather is more than welcome. So that as it regards Mr. Ace. Now, Mr. Ace, as you know, is not in government in Curacao. Mr. Ace twice have been Prime Minister of the Netherlands Antilles, but now he's in private practice. So I'm hopeful that his experience from the past could be useful to us in moving forward. In regards to the other question, which was
Bank accounts for private people as well as businesses that are being closed, even though these people are legally compliant.
yes, this is a vexing problem that we have identified, and the Council of Ministers have had meetings with individuals who have suffered from this. It all has to do with FATCA. FATCA is the worldwide compliance organization that exists that requires all countries to meet certain standards and norms that they have established. And financial institutions who service the public, if they don't meet the norms set by FATCA, they could be exposed to astronomical fines for non-compliance. As a result of that, and it's not only St. Martin, but it's throughout the Caribbean, throughout the world actually, not only the Caribbean, these financial institutions have earmarked certain clients or accounts as high-risk accounts that exposes them to these astronomical fines that can be imposed, and instead of risking that fine being applied, they have identified certain high-risk accounts that they've invited to please close their accounts and to seek services elsewhere. Most of our banks are banks that have their headquarters elsewhere. And our local banks are not the ones who make the decision. It's made by their headquarters. And their headquarters have a global overall view and really does not care or have any attention as to, in a specific case, in a specific country, what consequences that could have for that individual. On the other hand, they have, it's a service they're rendering. It's not they're not obligated to serve you as a customer. It's a service that they offer you, you can accept the service, or if they don't want to render you the service, they have a right to invite you to please come and close your account. They no longer want your business because they considered you high risk. This issue has been in discussion regionally with the Caribbean, and it has to do with correspondent banks. Correspondent banks are needed on all the islands to be able to execute financial transactions outside of the islands. To do that, you need to use a correspondent bank. If that correspondent bank considers a particular transaction high risk, the correspondent bank will not execute it. So in the Caribbean context, there are discussions to go to Washington to try to lobby so that the Caribbean can have its own correspondent bank in the United States, and then that correspondent bank could make the judgment as to whether or not certain accounts they will consider high risk or not, and in so doing could also take into account national interests. I need to also explain to you that under the FATCA regime, countries worldwide, also Holland, have been given the option to either direct the information exchange, which is also a part of the FATCA regime, through government or through your financial institutions. St. Martin has opted, this is the previous government, to not let this information stream go through the government, because government, the capacity that's needed to do it and the expertise that needed to do it was not there, but they left that up to the local banks. So the local banks are the ones who provide information. Holland and Curacao with the help of Holland, have chosen to have that information be shared with the IRS in the United States through the government. So any information that's going to be shared goes from your local institutions to the government and then to the IRS. In our situation, it goes from our local institutions directly to the IRS. There is also another system that is also, that we have to be compliant with, I think is in 2018, it's called the CRS. So next to the FATCA, you're going to have CRS. CRS system is one where all countries are going to be required to exchange same information, but on a much more accurate basis. The software for that, Holland has promised to provide us with that software, and we are gearing up to become compliant in that respect by the date that has been set. Once that is executed, we will then be in an ideal position as government to be able to provide the information of our financial institutions via government. But until that time, our financial institutions provide the information direct. So the problem you raise is an ongoing problem. It has not been resolved as yet. It has been recognized, and it is a problem that is being coped with throughout the Caribbean. No specific solution has been found as yet. I have suggested as an interim solution, and that's what I'm working on, is to form a national development bank with an arm to be able to do commercial banking business, to be able to accommodate these persons, but only as far as it concerns payment of their employees on island, payment of their suppliers on island, not international financial transactions. Hopefully, that can bring a relief once that is in place.
Thank you very much, Minister Gibson, for that extensive explanation. I now turn my attention to Minister Myers. Minister Myers, you raised the situation of the dump fires, as well as the garbage collection of parcel 5 and 6. But I would want to direct my question more to parcel 5 and 6 of garbage collection. Can you tell me if this is the largest district on St. Martin, and if there's anything done to educate the population as to the timeline in which they are allowed to dispose of garbage in order to curb the amount of garbage that we have on the roadside almost 24 hours?
Thank you, Bibi. As it pertains to the largest district, I don't have that information at hand. I could say that the Cul-de-sac Basin is the most densely populated district on the island. In talks with the contractor, it was indicated the contractor did submit a schedule indicating date and time of the collection of the solid waste. It was not satisfactory with the ministry. We returned that, and in our discussions, we set out a proper timeline for dates and times of collection of the garbage. That information will be submitted to me this week for perusal. That information will then be published to the public that they are aware. These are the dates, these are the times that the garbage will be collected in your district. And that information, hopefully with a PR campaign, could inform the public more. And with the help of the public, again, if you know the garbage was already picked up at a certain time, hopefully there will be some cooperation with the residents in the district, because it's in their interest as well to keep their district clean.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
questions. Bibi, Hilbert Hart, Today newspaper, you have the floor.
Yes, sorry. My first question for Prime Minister Marlin about electoral reform. What exactly is going to the Council of Advice?
The only thing that is presently before the Council of Advice is to make the amendment or introduce a change to the law that says that a government needs to be supported by political parties representing a majority. So the government, that's it. The government needs to be supported by political parties. Yeah. What that would constitute is that the political parties, you need to register a political party to be able to take part in the electoral process. It is not like before when one can, the day of postulation, show up and submit a list with one name, with two names, even with 10 names. Now, even if you show up a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks before postulation, you cannot participate if you are not registered with the Electoral Council. In order to register, a party needs to live up to several criteria, and the Constitution has to be this, that, and the other. So the new system that we introduced in 2010 places quite some emphasis and focus on political parties and the existence of political parties and the need for political parties to participate in an election. What we are saying with the change is that after the election, the main voting bureau, when they establish the results, you have political party X won 5 seats, political party, this one won 3 seats, that one won 4 seats, that one won 2 seats. So they don't talk about the individuals, it is political parties that have won seats. Then the political parties, based on the law, persons who won those seats in the respective political parties are candidate X, Y, and Z. Now, what I had proposed for them to look at was to not allow persons to declare themselves independent. They have said that that would be too much in conflict with the principle of the free mandate, in Dutch de vrije mandaat, and they have opted to arrive at the same results, basically though by saying that the government has to be supported by political parties. So they recognize the freedom of a member of parliament to leave his party or her party, so you can move away from your party. There are some who are offended by the term of ship jumping, but you're allowed to quit your party. But then you are not a party and you're not forming part of a party. You are forming part of parliament. You maintain and retain all your rights and privileges as a member of parliament, but the support for the formation of a government has to come from political parties. That is what basically the change will entail. They had also drafted a change to the electoral law to allow, I had asked them to create the possibility for students living abroad to study. What they have done was copy basically the Dutch model that allows citizens with a Dutch nationality who have lived in Holland for 10 years or more to vote. That is not what we want. Today again, I discussed with the chairman the need for them to basically create the possibility to just add besides what we have now, that in order to vote, you got to be a resident of St. Martin of Dutch nationality, 18 years and older, and registered at the census office. What we will now add to it would be that students living abroad who were registered on St. Martin prior to leaving and are now full-time students outside of St. Martin. That would then open the possibility for students in Holland, but also students in the region and other parts of the world, so to speak. But we are limiting it only to students. One can look at it as a positive discrimination. One would say, when I say a positive discrimination, you are discriminating against others who are no longer registered on St. Martin, but we feel the students are a special group because they were forced to write out of St. Martin in order to go study. Somebody, and I use my family as an example, and I say I have a sister who has made a conscious choice to go live in Holland. I have another sister who has made a conscious choice to live in the United States. So if that is where you're living, that is where you should vote. You have chosen to leave. We have St. Martiners who have chosen to live in Aruba. We have other St. Martiners who have chosen to live in Curacao. And there are some St. Martiners who have chosen also to live in Holland. We feel St. Martin is too small for us to say anybody of Dutch nationality who has ever lived on St. Martin and is now living abroad can vote. We are limiting it to students who, because they are studying, are forced to write out of St. Martin. And the other changes, I think I've discussed this already before, they are not changes. The other issues that have to do with electoral reform, with the election, with the procedures following up to election, those are already regulated by law. And it's a matter of the Minister of Justice enforcing those. So what you would have is probably even before postulation that an announcement will be made that 2 days, 48 hours before election, so election is on a Monday, 48 hours before that, all posters, all political paraphernalia has to be removed from the public roads, so we won't have on election day, you go to a polling station and there are billboards as tall as a house, not from any one political party, from all political parties. All political parties have done it, some more than the other, but it takes away from the idea of free elections, because the voter is intimidated when he or she arrives at the polling station with sometimes dozens of people from one political party, and then there are polling stations where you have literally over 100 people from the different political parties tugging and shouting at them, showing off their political colors, showing posters, everybody trying to get that last-minute impression on the voter to convince the voter that this is the way to go. And we are saying, no, you have 6 weeks of campaign, 48 hours before, let the voter now reflect. I have seen it, I have listened, give me now some time to reflect, make up my mind, Monday morning, go out and vote.
Okay, thank you. Minister Myers, could you explain the difference between the, in technical terms, the temporary repairs of Front Street and the proper repairs that are going to be done afterwards? What is the extra there?
Thank you for the question. Well, seeing that the Carnival parade will be going through Front Street, and the situation that Front Street was in, it was decided that to start the works for Front Street itself would take too much of time. So in the interim, that we would do some temporary repairs, and after the carnival season, then we would start with the thing. So it's just a matter of logistics that if the works had started, it would not be completed in time for the carnival parade.
Yeah, but what is in technical terms the proper repairs? Because I see now the guys, they're putting sand and they straighten the street level. What else has to be done when they do proper repairs?
Well, we have in certain areas where you really had a lot of sagging in Front Street. There is sewage lines under there. Some of the sewage lines are damaged, and so we would have to remove the bricks, look at the sewage lines, repair if necessary in certain areas the sewage line, and in certain areas with the sidewalks and things. So it is a bigger scope than what they are doing now. Is just a temporary fix that the Carnival could thing. But
Yeah, okay, because I understood that the pressure of the seawater underneath the street also causes those that sagging.
well,
Maybe I'm wrong there.
I did not receive that report. It was a drainage issue,
Okay.
and that is being looked, and that will be taken up in the bigger scope of the works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Hilbert, for your questions. Judy Fitzpatrick, Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good morning, ministers. I have a question for Minister Marlin regarding the multi-level parking that the APS will be creating based on the land swap. Can you indicate how many parking spaces will be in that, and do you have any indication as to the cost of building that facility? And where exactly is this land, and what will they be doing with the second plot of land?
And that will be your 4 questions. Thank you very much, Judy. Prime Minister?
Should I repeat them?
No. I'm just looking at the reaction of the colleagues. It almost looks like Parliament when one fires a shot at one and the other's enjoying it. The amount of parking that will be created by APS, I think it's 400 parking spaces. So far, it appears the intention is that one of them will be reserved, one level will be reserved for government's use, and the other 3 levels would be for the general public. Of course, if they make an investment in the facility, they will be looking for a return on the investment. It's not a gift they are giving to the people and government of St. Martin. You asked when it will be finished?
If you have any indication as to the cost and where exactly is the plot of land?
The plot of land is to the north of the government building, and the other plot of land is for the construction of what is known as Block D.
Okay.
Block D is an extension of the government building. Since we are talking about government building, it's not a question, but I'm sneaking that in, if you want to call it. We are busy preparing documents for the realization of a new building which will be built on the area next to the receiver. So where the receiver's building is now, the receiver and census office, we will build a new building that the receiver, the census office will occupy. It will be about 3 levels, 3 floors. And once we complete the building, then we will tear down the existing building and use that for additional parking as well. But we are in the preliminary stages of, preliminary stages. We are the final stages of preparing the documents for it to probably go on bid. We'll have more information on that in a later broadcast.
You didn't answer a question, may I?
Which one did you miss?
The cost.
The cost, I do not know what it will be at this point in time. It's APS that is doing this, and it's a project they're doing on their own.
Thank you very much.